Good morning, shalom, ahlan wa sahlan. This briefing from inside the Middle East will begin momentarily. I'd like to, in the meantime, reflect on our current fellowship, which applications are still open. We still have a few spots. Our premise is to understand Israel, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the Palestinians. We must understand the Middle East. Please refer any students and young leaders between 18 and 30, high-achieving individuals with the desire to bridge divides. Join us and renowned Middle East educator and experts, Avi Melamed, from across the Middle East to gain knowledge, the skills, the tools to become ambassadors of change. Our fellowship, Voices from the Middle East About the Middle East, runs from October 2026 through April 2027 with Sunday weekly Zoom sessions, assignments and projects, and a final capstone project. We're looking for the best students and young leaders between 18 and 30 to come and join us. Avi?
Josh, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, shalom from Israel. Thank you for joining this yet another session by ITME, the briefing room. And this session is focusing on a very intriguing state in the Middle East, and that is Iraq. And to that end, we are very honored to host today our guest speaker, Mr. ADEEB Alnaemi. As always, let me just shortly introduce Mr. Alnaemi. Before that, just let me remind you once again, please post your questions at the right spot at the webinar location, and then we will handle your question through the mediation of Josh. As always, our time frame is about an hour, about 30 to 40 minutes. I will have a discussion with our guest speaker, and then we will obviously try to answer some of your questions. Thank you for your patience and for joining this yet another webinar by ITME. So, Mr. ADEEB Alnaemi has been serving as a clinical associate professor for Arabic and media at NYU since receiving his MA in journalism there in 2010. He worked for PBS and the BBC in Iraq after the American invasion in 2003. Then he joined the New York Times and became the news editor of its Baghdad bureau before coming to the US as a Knight Wallace Fellow at the University of Michigan. He writes for several publications in Arabic and English and conducts research in Middle Eastern politics, media, and methods of teaching the Arabic language. Mr. Alnaemi, we are very, very honored to have you with us in this session of the briefing room. Thank you for your time and for joining us.
Thank you very much, Avi. Thanks a lot to you and to the staff for inviting me, and it's an honor to be with you and your audience today.
Thank you, sir. So, when we kind of talked before this session and, we talked about Iraq and your fascinating personal career and milestones, you said to me that actually you would like to start talking about a very specific milestone in the story of Iraq, which to a large extent is coinciding with your own personal story. And this is the occupation of Iraq by the United States back there in the beginning of the 2000s.
Thank you, Avi.
Why did you want to start there?
I think it's important to understand the background because when we talk about what is happening right now, before we talk about what's happening right now in Iraq, definitely we're gonna touch on issues like the militias, the Iranian influence, Iraq's strategic role in the Middle East, and especially in the light of what's happening right now in the Gulf. So it's good to just shed some light on what led Iraq to be in this position since 2003. I'm not going to go back too much in history. We all know the ramifications of the occupation of Kuwait and then 1991 war and then the sanctions that lasted since 1990 until the invasion in 2003. At that time, I was in Baghdad, and as you said, it's personal and also at the same time, it's a political issue that's relevant to what we are talking about today. We all thought that the enterprise that the US had after 9/11 would be, as they said, to spread democracy, or at least to build the model instead of the dictatorship that we had in Iraq under Saddam. That would be inspiring to start a wave of change maybe in the Middle East. We have some kind of a functioning beginning of a democracy in Iraq. What actually shocked us was the lack of planning by the Bush administration, the rush to war without understanding the demographics, the political landscape, the history of the country, and the endorsement of allies of Iran. We saw them since the onset as allies of Iran, as allies of the US instead of the Sunnis that the US thought they were the enemies at the time. So we were governed by an American politician who had no previous experience in the Middle East, Paul Bremer, who still gives talks every year about justifying the mistakes. The US made a big mistake by allowing these religious parties in the name of democracy or under the false impression that they were allies to the US, although they were supportive of the invasion at the time. And that led to a sort of a distorted democracy where we do have elections. We do have the setting of democracy, but democracy is not just throwing a piece of paper in a ballot box. It's a whole process. It's a civil society. It's free flow of information. It's institutions. It's not just simply, as I saw it at the time, someone who had his legs tied for ages, and then you just untie him and ask him to run. It should have been a gradual transition, and definitely not by the religious parties that were on top of the political agenda at the time. So yes, I'm happy to answer your questions. I hope that I just made it. I promised you that I would be brief because this whole thing takes a lot of explanation. If we want to talk about Paul Bremer and then the transition and the whole process, it's going to take a long time. But it's just this is a continuation of the American essential or huge failure in Iraq, and as we saw also in Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, thank you for this interesting framing. It's yes, I totally agree with you in the sense that Iraq is definitely one of the most complicated places on this planet. I mean, it's a fascinating state. Almost 50 million people. You got majority of Shiites, you got Sunnis, you got Kurds, you got an ethnical policies and politics that is divided through geographical regions. This is a state that is one of the wealthiest states on this planet. Many times I'm thinking to myself that Iraq could have been and should have been heaven, but that is very much, unfortunately, not the situation. I recently, a couple of days ago, I read an article by an Iraqi journalist. You may know him, Nizar Jaff. And he wrote an article titled, saying, Iraq is a state made of glass. And actually what he said was, to a large extent, this is a failing state that has a facade, sort of speaking, as a state, but it doesn't really functioning as a state. So when you look at the story of Iraq in contemporary times, it's a constant story of challenges and turbulences and inner conflicts. take us into the Iraqi mindset. Let us have this inner perspective of the Iraqi mindset.
Yes, I agree, Avi. Number one, Iraq is a failing state, or it's just a facade of a state, because as you can see, simply every other day you hear or you read in the news that there were drones launched from Iraq towards Kuwait or Saudi Arabia, and the government denounces that as if it's happening in somewhere else. The government has no ability to control, has no ability to stop the militias, although the militias are partners in the, let's say, the Shia, what they call it, the Shiite framework, coordination framework or something like that in Arabic, which is basically the Shiite coalition that brought the prime minister to power. Yes, I mean, no country, no state, no functioning state would allow militias to be that active, to take the decision of peace and war in their own hands with no coordination with the government, not even informing no one knows, not even the Minister of Defense knows when and where these drones were launched from. The Iraqi mindset, if we want to go back a little bit, since the fall of Saddam, unfortunately, as a consequence of the several wars that we had, the meaningless wars that we had under Saddam, we had fractures in the Iraqi society, in the feeling of, or in the loyalty to the Iraqi nationalism. Iraqis sort of resorted to their religions, to their sects, instead of believing in one unified national identity. That's because of what the government under Saddam has done. And later on, the American perspective, plus as I said, the religious parties that came to power, who don't have, I mean, religious parties, whether Shias or Sunnis, that doesn't matter, but once you put religion in power, it is a divisive, unfortunately, it's a divisive tool in the hands of politicians, because it's one of the strong tools to appeal to religious emotions in people and create your own base within the constituency, and keep them there as loyal constituency to you because of the sect or the religion that they follow. So Iraqi mind now is let me say, it's split between the religious loyalty and what is left of Iraqi national identity, which is it follows interpretations depending on the sect that you follow, depending on the religion that you follow, depending on the if you are Arab or Kurd. The Kurds, as you mentioned, the journalist Al-Jaf is Kurdish, and I don't disagree with him. I agree with what he said, of course. But that also touches on how the Kurds see Iraq as a state and how the Kurds view it as actually something that they need to get rid of. They want to have their own state, which does not contribute actually to solidifying the Iraqi national identity. It adds to the challenges that we are facing right now in Iraq. We don't have a sectarian civil war as we used to have the years after 2003, but the violence has
We do have some technical issues. I hope that the connection will resume shortly. But meanwhile, I will take the opportunity and actually following what our guest speaker emphasized. Indeed, when you look at the story of Iraq, Mr. Ali, you've been frozen, so I want to make sure that we will reconnect. So please continue.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yes. So I think one of the main challenges here right now, when you set of Iraqis is, but you'll see a divide in Iraq right now. Some Iraqis think that it's be with Iran at this point, and so being Arabs, being Iraqis, being independent, it's its duty to support Iran, and others, the Sunnis mainly, and also the Kurds. They just want to be at least. We had enough wars. We don't want to be involved. We don't want to the neighboring countries. But from the events that we are seeing, there is now in Iraq and the way they view the war by the U.S. and Israel, and this just tells you a lot of how Iraqis are divided actually in their daily lives and in their political spectrum and the way they view their identity as Iraqis, mainly in the south and in the reaching to the middle of Iraq to Baghdad, where you have a majority of Shiite Iraqis. Being a Shia is a huge part of being an Iraqi. That's how they interpret it. Iraq has a majority of Shias, so Iraq should have a Shiite identity. The Sunnis think that the Americans helped the Shias, or the Shia, let's put it this way, the Shia religious parties hijack Iraq's identity and make it as a backyard to Iran instead of an independent sovereign country. The Kurds simply just want out. They want the oil, and we'll have our own state and nothing to do with the Arabs. So yeah, unfortunately, this is the if I can put it in a nutshell, as they say. Yeah.
So, Mr. Ali, these friction lines in Iraq are so clear as you very accurately portrayed them. I still wonder, because there was an interesting episode within this whole chaotic situation in Iraq, particularly against the background of the Iranian intervention. There was an interesting episode in the story of Iraq where I was thinking that maybe for the first time we are witnessing the rise of some sort of like national identity that brings together Iraqis that are Shiites and Kurds and Sunnis and so on. And that was back then in 2019, 2020, when in particularly the south part of Iraq, which is predominantly Shiite, this is the hub of the Shiite power in Iraq and the hub of the Iranian-backed Shiite militias, there were a spontaneous wave of demonstrations of Iraqi, particularly Shiite, who went out to the streets protesting and calling out, as you probably remember, Iran barra barra, Baghdad hurra hurra, meaning Iran get out and Baghdad will be free, will be independent. And one of the things that struck me back then was the fact that these people went out to the streets, fueled by those sentiments that at least partially are affiliated with some national identification, but not only that, but also some sort of like an outcry against the backdrop of corruption and lack of services and so on and so on. But at the same time, they were brutally murdered by their own brothers who were just shooting them in the streets. I remember those terrible videos coming from those protests demonstrating that. What happened to this national burst, sort of speaking? Is it gone? Is it there? Is it waiting for something that happened to re-emerge? Can you identify that?
Yes, it's you put it accurately, Avi. Yes, there was a national wave led mainly by the younger generation. Just young men and women in their 20s taking to the streets in Baghdad and in southern cities, as you said, mainly Shiites. I mean, most of them. And they were actually mixed Shias and Sunnis in Baghdad and other cities. But yes, it was an unexpected at the time, a strong, a great challenge to the government at the time. And yes, they were crushed brutally by the Shiite militias and under orders, explicit orders from Soleimani at the time, who met with the Shiite, the leaders of Shiite militias in Baghdad, and sort of coordinated this, what they called it, a wave made by or manufactured or let's say staged by the embassies. This is the way they put it in officially, by the Shiite parties, and the reference was definitely to the American embassy at the time, and they labeled the activists, the leaders, as agents of America, as people who are being, bribed and pushed by a foreign power against, not against the state, but they labeled it as against the sect, against religion, against God. They played the same old game in politics, where you label your political enemies as enemies of God, and you're defending the right path to God or religion or whatever, and then you have all right to behave on behalf of God, and then arrest, shoot, do whatever. And this failure, this brutal crackdown on the activists led to some sort of not just disappointment, but a lot of hope that after all what we did, our friends, family members were killed. No accountability. The government, got away with it. The people who shot us are still in power. So what else can we do? How much can we? For how long can we maintain the momentum of this, let's say, burst of emotions against the government? And it happened also in Lebanon, if you think at the same time, and in both places they were crushed. In both places. They were crushed not just by, in Iraq, it was way more brutal than, of course, than Lebanon. Hundreds and hundreds of activists were kidnapped, tortured, killed. A lot of sad stories. I personally think that the resentment is there, the anger is still there. It is, I would say, it is waiting for the right moment to burst again, to show up again. Now the current government is sort of aware of this, so it started its campaign against corruption, trying to just prove to the public that we are doing something that others have failed to do. Trying to sort of get some kind of acceptance by the people. Most likely because the prime minister was never even a politician. He was not a politician. He was someone that was put in place by the winners for a simple reason, because of the American veto on them. That's all.
Right. So, it's interesting. You just mentioned the new Iraqi prime minister.
Mm.
Recently, there has been general elections in Iraq not so long ago,
Yeah.
and those elections have, again basically brought to power the major, what you call the Itar al-Tansikh, the Shiite frame that brings
Mm.
together all those major Shiite groups, but not only them. And the prime minister of Iraq, the current one, actually, you mentioned, has been launching this campaign to fight corruption. There has been some very dramatic scenes of,
Mm-hmm.
exposing billions of dollars apparently smuggled or stolen by officials and others. He was recently in the States, and the major issue discussed was this whole disarmament of the Iraqi Shiite militias who are associated or affiliated with Iran,
Mm-hmm.
which basically are the major power base right now in Iraq. They are holding political parties as well as part of the government. Do you really think that, and particularly against the backdrop of the war between Iran and the United States, do you think that there is a hope for a scenario where those militias are going to be disarmed and sovereignty of the states of Iraq will be restored?
Uh, Honestly, because of if you read the whole, if you look at the whole situation, and if you take all factors into account, the most optimistic end I would think of would be some sort of a pause to their activities at the time at this time. Some sort of a truce maybe reached through negotiations, because the prime minister, as you just said also, that he's not one of the I mean, he doesn't have a party. He's there because of the nomination of the Tansiq, the Shiite coalition, who were forced to bring someone who is mainly a businessman, because Trump, put a veto on Nouri al-Maliki, the former prime minister, because he's very close to Iran. And
Right.
yeah, so now the current prime minister has a plan to disarm the militias by September 30th, which is. I don't think it's realistic. A lot of observers think that it's not going to happen. What's the most successful end result that I would think of would be an agreement between him and leaders of these militias to, give the Iraqi government some breathing space in their negotiations with the U.S. to avoid any kind of sanctions, to avoid any kind of pressures for, by the Trump administration, and that would be some kind of an agreement, not the actually that the state is enforcing law and order and disarming the militias. I don't think the state is capable now of officially and physically disarming the militias. You have tens of thousands. You have people who are well trained, people supported by Iran that still has a lot of influence in Iraq. So it's not going to happen as easy as that, in 1 month from now.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally share your perspectives and observation on that issue. I want to divert a little bit to talk about something else, but it's enormously, I think, significant in the context of Iraq, and not only Iraq. It has a lot of, in my mind, regional perspectives. Iraq has been known as the Balad al-Rafidain, the country of the two veins or the two rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris. My grandfather, my mother's father, came from Kirkuk, which is the northern part of Iraq, the Kurdish part of Iraq. Well, he came as a young man, but he was totally part of the Iraqi culture. And I remember that he used to tell us stories about those beautiful rivers crossing through Iraq. Those beautiful rivers are disappearing.
Yes.
And today Iraq is facing an enormous environmental challenge that has an enormous ramifications. I'm not so sure that this is something that Western audience are familiar with. Can you shed a little bit light on that issue?
It's also linked to the political situation in Iraq. And now the weakness of the Iraqi government has sort of encouraged the Turkish government to simply go ahead with its plans to fill the dams that they have and disregard Iraq's needs. And they would just give us like 1 million cubic meters of water flow. Turkey sort of has a pretext that Iraq doesn't have enough resources to use the water, and a lot of it is going to the Gulf, wasted. So we will use it and we'll give Iraq what is enough or what's sufficient. But at the same time, there are environmental factors playing also into this. There is a drop in the water level in the rivers that come from Iran and Turkey, and both are affecting the Tigris and the one in Euphrates from Turkey. It's the inability of the Iraqi government to have a significant, clear agreement with Turkey that would outline the ration of water that Iraq would get every year or on daily basis for an annual agreement. Is another reflection of the political failure in Iraq. Whenever there is a problem, we have a drop in the level of Euphrates and Tigris. They send the Minister of Water Resources to Turkey, and we have some kind of an interim or an agreement that is not that is sort of just to deal with this problem on a temporary basis, but it's not something that would deal with the whole issue. Sorry. Now we have witnessed this year, for instance, it was Mother Nature. It was not Turkey. It was not Syria. It's because of the melting of the snows and the heavy rain that Turkey had. That the Turkish government had to open the dams in Turkey, and we even saw the marshes reviving again in southern Iraq, not just Tigris and Euphrates. But definitely, this does not build a stable future. I mean, you cannot rely on the seasonal rain from Turkey, or the melting of snow in Turkey, and say, well, this is going to hopefully, inshallah, this will solve the problem.
Yeah.
You need to have a solid agreement with the Turks, and you also need to. I'm not just blaming the Turks, but I'm also saying that the Iraqi government has not actually invested that much in the infrastructure. We need more dams. We need more water treatment. We need definitely the water sector in Iraq is a very strategic point of it's the life of millions of people depend on it. Now the agricultural the spectrum in Iraq has heavily been impacted by the lack of water resources. We have a very famous rice production in Iraq. It has its own distinct flavor and smell when you cook it. It's almost, it has diminished to a great extent because of water, because we don't have enough water to grow it the traditional way, or there was no help from the government to the farmers to find alternatives. So it's just a government failure. It's a reflection of weakness of the political spectrum, and it's an issue also for compromise with the Turks and the Kurds, and it became an issue to compromise. We'll give you this, you give us that, and unfortunately, the people are suffering. If you go to Baghdad, usually, I mean, not this year. This year, it's better than before. But if you go, Tigris is just like a big creek. It's not a river.
Yeah. I saw videos coming from Iraq, and I was really shocked. It's very sad to see that. We're approaching the end of our conversation before we turn to the Q&A. I started and said, Iraq should have been heaven because it's one of the largest, producer of oil, and it has an enormous wealth that definitely has been misused, to put it mildly. But when I'm following closely the story of Iraq, I'm constantly thinking about the young people because majority of the Iraqis are young people.
Yeah.
Do you consider that to be as a source of a hope for a different path for Iraq?
Yes, I do. Personally, when I speak with the younger generation, when I go to Iraq, of course, I'm not talking to millions of younger people, but they are a specimen. And when I look at the social media also, I cannot claim that I do have numbers, but it's something that I have touched on personally. The younger generation has a much more progressive look at the country and their identity as Iraqis. They are less linked to Iran or to their sectarian identity, less than the older generation. And they want a better future to their country. The older generation thinks that compared to the time of Saddam, we are in heaven. The younger generation did not see Saddam, and they're comparing to others. They're comparing their country to, as you said, we are a country, we have oil, one of the big oil production countries in the world. We have 2 rivers. We can be one of the top tourism destinations in the country and in the region. Even religious tourism. So the younger generation sees the potential in Iraq. They don't compare to an era that they have not been in before. So they think, no, why are we less than Dubai? Why are we living less than the Saudis are in Riyadh or Qataris in Doha? We should have this and that. And they have, as you said, open internet. The younger generation are much more computer savvy than our generation. So they know their way and they see things. They travel right now. Iraqis can travel to the Gulf states. It's not as difficult as it used to be, and they see firsthand the kind of cities that wealth can build, and they go back to Baghdad and other cities, and they see the failing infrastructure, in all aspects, not just one thing or another. So yes, I do have hope in the younger generation. I'm not saying it's going to happen, in the near future, but hopefully, yes, once we get rid of the old guard, the people who came with this old perspective of Iraq, the divisive one, the corrupt one, we have a political class that is known for its corruption, its lack of vision, and its sectarian view of the country. So all these factors are less present. I wouldn't say they are completely non-existent, but they are less present in the minds of the younger generation.
Well, I would say that it seems to me like at least it's a great point to kind of like conclude this intriguing conversation about this very intriguing state, Iraq, which we are closely, of course, watching to see how things will evolve there. I want to, at this point, to turn the discussion to my colleague and educational director of ITME, Josh Goldberg. Josh, mediate the question part. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, gentlemen. It's an honor to be a part of this discussion. I've got tons of questions here. So here's the first one, Mr. Al-Aimi. How do you see Iraq in the political system in the context of the region? It's not necessarily in the headlines. Why is Iraq such a critical state vis-a-vis the entirety of the region?
It is critical because it finds itself as, to some point, aligned with Iran because of the Iranian influence, to some point trying to play the role of a mediator, and also trying to juggle these three things, and also to be a sovereign state, to take care of its own national interests. So these three factors are pressuring the Iraqi decision making. Politicians find themselves always cornered by these three lines. You have to strike an accurate balance between these three lines. What would not trigger an Iranian intervention in Baghdad through their mainly the heads of militias, who are very powerful. What would not trigger an American response, as we saw weeks ago, before Zaidi became prime minister, there were threats by the Trump administration that there might be sanctions. So they have to balance all these factors, and at the same time, Iraq is one of them, or it used to be one of the main countries in the Arab region. Now it is way more linked to Iran than its independent role as an Arab state. And lately, another factor is in play, which is the relationship with the Gulf states, and what's happening with the militias and the attacks on the Gulf states. So Iraq is in a very critical situation, trying to find its path through all these challenges. I don't think there is another country in the region that has all these factors pressuring its political decision as Iraq.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question is regarding the construct of the militias. Al-Hajj al-Shabi, can you talk about how these militias, how they operate, what is their structure, and how does they exert their influence within Iraq?
Al-Hajj al-Shabi mainly was established when ISIS, Daesh, took over Mosul, and there was a state of panic because we saw the Iraqi troops there simply vanishing within 1 or 2 days. So there was no confidence in the Iraqi army and the institution of defense of the country or in the state. So there was a call by Ayatollah Sistani and others to form Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi, the popular mobilization, to defend the country. So it was something spontaneous that happened at the time with the Iranian support to stop ISIS from reaching Baghdad. And yes, at the time, the Iranians sold actually weapons, they did not give weapons for free, but they helped with training, they helped with the support information. And then later on, the Obama administration came in and also supported the Iraqi war against ISIS. But after the defeat of ISIS, after freeing Mosul, you have tens of thousands of Shiite fighters who looked like something like the Revolutionary Guard in Iran. So Iran sort of constructed this institution to resemble its own Revolutionary Guard, and they were simply put under the command of the prime minister, but it's just something ceremonial, to be honest. They don't behave, they don't operate the way Iraqi army operates, that is directly under the orders of the prime minister. They have their own leaders. They get orders from Iran directly. They have the Iranian protection of coverage within the Shiite coalition. And they have their own representatives in the government. They get money officially from the Iraqi government, but they don't actually follow the orders of the prime minister. And at some point, the previous prime minister, Mustafa al-Kadhimi, there was an assassination attempt on him by a drone by one of the militias. So they wanted to, they attacked their own commander-in-chief. So Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi is an institution that is parallel to the Iraqi army. That's why whenever we talk about disarming the militias, we're talking if it's not going to happen within a political agreement, it's going to simply ignite a civil war, a war between the military, the Iraqi military, and maybe another, there would be another Sunni militias emerging, and the Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi, the Shiite militias.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This question is from Jeff. Having reported from Iraq during such a pivotal time, how has your understanding of the relationship between journalism and public perception evolved over the course of your career?
Well, journalism, to my own understanding and the way I learned it, is simply to help the reader or the viewer, if you were working in a TV channel, to make the right decision. And that's by providing as much accuracy in your reporting. No bias, no agendas. You give the facts. And this is what influenced my understanding of journalism, and this is how we operated when I was working as a journalist. Now, if you talk about the media in Iraq, if we talk about the local media in Iraq, they are simply partisan. They're funded by political parties, and you can even know the political affiliation of an Iraqi by seeing what he's watching, which channel he's getting his news from. Which is, it's the same maybe around the world, but it's very stark in Iraq. In terms of the foreign media, let's say American media outlets, some of them still have the foreign perspective. They don't go into that much of depth in analyzing the news or in telling the American reader what is behind the scene, what he needs or what she needs to know, to understand the news. I was in touch, for instance, with one of my colleagues at the New York Times once about an article that was actually describing what Avi talked about in one of his questions about the young men and women who took to the streets in Iraq in 2019 and 2020. And the article started with the lead was that demonstrators were out in the streets with the support of the Iraqi president and Ayatollah Sistani. That was a huge misrepresentation. When the people initiate these demonstrations and then politicians rush to support it, you don't label it to the American reader as this is some kind of a power struggle within the government and the people are supporting this side against that side. So I found that a huge misrepresentation of events. Of course, I'm not saying all the coverage is like that, but sometimes you find things like that add to the confusion of the American reader and the Western reader in general.
Thank you. I'm hoping we have time for 2 more questions. This one is from Arnold. A leaked Mossad plan for regime change in Iran relied on using Iraq as a base of operations and Iraqi Kurds as the vanguard for attacking Iran. Could this be an actual plan, or is it naive, wishful thinking?
I would say it's a naive, wishful thinking. Yes, yes. The Kurds have, number one, the Kurds are a minority in Iran. Number two, the Kurds have learned their lessons, let's put it this way. Since the time of Mullah Mustafa Barzani, the time of the agreement between the Shah and Saddam in 1975, and how the whole thing collapsed. What happened recently with the Kurds in Syria, despite their strong alliance and the ties with the US, and how they were simply were being treated as an obsolete factor in the Syrian spectrum, political spectrum. I wouldn't see this as a viable option at all. Using the Kurds in Iran, and you know, I read this plan, and I read Trump's comments on the plan and his criticism of the position of the Kurds, but I definitely understand how the Kurds of Syria actually and the Kurds in Iraq, the political leadership in both countries advised the Kurds in Iran not to go ahead with the plan, because it's going to be, you know, it's going to have a devastating, it's going to be a failure, even worse than the Bay of Pigs. It's going to be, the consequences would be devastating to the Kurds. So no, it's not a viable plan at all.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the themes of ITME, here's our next question. One of the themes of ITME inside the Middle East is helping people understand the complexity rather than reducing issues to simple narratives. If you could convince audiences to replace one oversimplified narrative about Iraq with a more accurate one, what would it be?
I would think of the narrative that dominated the American explanation of their failure, which is, to be honest, I found it shocking that after 10 years, in 2013, I was invited to speak on a panel at the University of Chicago. And with me was on the same panel was the former ambassador, former American ambassador in Baghdad, officials from the Pentagon, an expert from a think tank in DC, and a British expert also. And I found the way they interpreted the failure in Iraq was all related to, well, they hated each other for centuries, and we cannot do anything about that. Iraq is a state manufactured or made by the Brits in 1920. This was all, I mean, and things like that. That at some point, the ambassador said something that was, to me, was shocking. You know, I heard it from an ambassador, not someone sitting in a cafe. He said, "We succeeded in South Korea, and we failed in Iraq because Koreans were working with us, Iraqis were shooting at us." And that was a narrative of a former ambassador. So the political elite in the US are still under this defensive narrative that we tried. It's a country that cannot be fixed. It's the people are they don't have an identity. There was no Iraq before the Brits, and it was one country because Saddam was brutally governing everyone. He was simply oppressing everyone. This is simply not true. I'm not saying this because of a nationalistic response or whatever. No, I'm just being 100% realistic in this point. Iraq was not manufactured by the Brits. It was there decades ago, and countries go through these shifts in their history. It's not something that is you can take it and say, oh, we would disregard national identity because this country went through this phase of civil war or whatever, political turbulence. So one of the narratives one of the simplifications that I would argue with is that there was nothing we can do. It's not our fault. It's the way Iraqis hate each other. I mean, I come from a mixed family, and my family does not hate each other. My surname is Al-Naemi, and it's a tribe that stretches from Mosul up north till the UAE. You can find one of the governors of the Emirates has the same title, the same family name. So you have cousins and people related from different sects. So you cannot simply say that this is a country that killed each other. Its people killed each other for centuries, and this is what we found. Sorry, no. It's not like that. As you said, we don't have time to go through all these complexities, but it is a much deeper and much more complex issue than simplified in this way.
Thank you kindly, sir, for that in-depth and personal response. I think that's the place we want to end for today, with the complexity. With the narrative to dispel the narratives and look at the Middle East as a much more complex region than simply black and white as sometimes is portrayed. Mr. Ali ADEEB ALNAEMI, thank you so much for your time. Avi, did you want to say a final thing?
Yeah, I just want to second what you just said, Josh. This is totally correct. And again, I want to thank our special guest, Mr. Naemi, for his unique insight perspectives, which I totally share at whole heart. I want to thank you all for participating. Josh, would you like to add something else, or we are done here?
Yes, I just want to say, please visit our website. There you'll find all kinds of information about further programs, about our fellowship. You'll see our next episode of the Briefing Room from the region about the region, Sunday, September 6th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Please go to our website, scan our QR code to support our good work so that we can have wonderful guests like Mr. Al-Naemi. Thank you to everyone who attended, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.